Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, y'all. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. I always like to begin with a silly networking story. Today's story is about building your personal network with people from grade school, high school, and college. Over the past 30 years, I've been intentional about connecting with and staying in touch with fellow alums from Blessed Sacrament Grade School, Central Catholic High School, the University of Toledo, and Columbia University. Their stories and the success they've achieved across the United States and around the world always amazes me. And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in, Ken Reiner. Ken is the Vice President of Content Acquisition for INSP in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ken is married to Julie Ballarucki Reiner, a grade school and high school friend. Ken and I share a common love of Toledo and the University of Toledo. Ken, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us on the Rocket Networker podcast.
So glad to be here, Rick.
Well, first off, we've got this cool background going on with this nice office you're in. So I can tell you, are you at home in the office or are you at work in the office?
I'm actually at work at the office here in South Carolina, in the southern suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. So
okay,
at the executive offices here at INSP.
I just out of curiosity, what's it like living on the South Carolina, North Carolina, border near Charlotte? What's that like?
It's a great environment down here in the Southeast, and Charlotte's a great community here. You got to love the weather. You got to love the financial district that's here, having a few media companies that also call Charlotte home too. So just a great way to go ahead and raise a family, a great work environment. The commute can be crazy and hectic like any big city, but I'm a small, short commute away here in Charlotte. But when you think about the sports teams, the museums, the restaurants, and just the whole business at Groom here, it's just a great place and a great way to live life down here in the Southeast. So especially when it comes to wintertime.
Well, I've heard nothing but great things about the Charlotte area. Ken, as we get into the podcast today, one of the things I like to focus on is a thing I call the threads of connectivity, the small things that connect us as people. We talk work all day, but it's a lot more fun talking about our hometown or our high school or college or our kids and the things that our children have done and our volunteerism. Those are the things that build the relationship. They connect us together. So that's what I want to focus on today, is to go through that journey with you. So let's go back in time and talk about your hometown. Where are you from originally?
Originally from Toledo, Ohio. I grew up there in South Toledo, and that's where the family really was established, a number of decades ago before me. But it was a great community just to grow up in, and I have two brothers in that, so we really enjoyed that part of Northwest Ohio.
You mentioned you have two brothers. Now, are they younger, older? Where are they at in the family?
Well, they're younger than me, but they look older than me, so I'll say Rick now.
I got you.
My brothers both are in the Northwest Ohio area. One is in Columbus, Ohio. The other one is in Lake Orion, Michigan. So they've stayed relatively close to that area. But for us, yes, all three of us grew up there. I'm the oldest of the three.
So you're the oldest in the family. Now, what was it like growing up with three boys like that? Were you guys like a built-in wrestling team?
Well, it was very competitive. I know when it came to the Reiner household, Mom usually ruled the roost, but she had to go ahead and wrangle three boys all the time. And a couple of us were very much into sports and enjoying that. My other brother was really not into sports. But we all had that connectivity as young kids and growing up and doing all the fun activities that you want to do together. And just it was a really good home life for us. And that always you have challenges as young kids and family and that. And we grew up in a great household, and we always had food in the kitchen and shoes on our feet and all those things. And grew up in a very modest environment, but a very loving home.
Where'd you go to grade school then in Toledo?
Two schools for me. I went to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic grade school in the South End, and then went to St. Patrick's of Heather Downs and stayed in that after moving from one home to another, we just moved in a couple of districts. So really enjoyed St. Patrick's Pettit Down. So
I
yeah,
got you.
that was our whole schooling was there, staying in the Catholic schools in the Toledo area.
Talk a little bit about high school then. Where did you go to high school at?
Went to Toledo Central Catholic, and that was a big move for us being in South Toledo and taking buses before I actually had my driver's license and taking that two-step commute to get out to Toledo Central Catholic. But it was one of those environments that I thought early on in my schooling was love to have a co-ed school and somewhere to go where I knew there was going to be a lot of diversity, a lot of opportunities, and just a great environment of people who were really excelling in school and in sports. And that's kind of where Central came to.
Right.
And my two brothers followed suit after I went to Central Catholic. They too went there as well.
So now in high school, what types of things were you involved with? Did you get actively involved, like in sports or glee club or student government or anything like that?
I was actively in sports in that. And when it came to basketball, track and field, and even bowling, there was three things that I was just excited about being part of. I was very active and being able to join the track team. Did a lot of CYO basketball in the day, and also that bowling was just a nice activity to meet and interact with students in that, which was a high priority for me. And at that point, I was also starting to work, which was great. So it was a great opportunity to really meet those high school friends of mine in the high school realm, but also meet from other high schools in and around the area.
Now, when you started getting toward your junior and senior year in high school, what were you thinking about, life after high school? Were you thinking military, or were you thinking college or skilled trades, or what were you kind of thinking about with life after high school?
I was pretty fascinated in the media industry and looking at productions, the way sporting events were produced, look at what was happening really behind the scenes, being behind the scenes or even in front of the camera, and how that was really fascinating to me to really kind of see how that all took shape and what it took as a team to bring all that together. And so that in my senior year was really looking at the possibility of getting into the media, and may have been sports, may have been actually in the entertainment side of the business. But that was really intriguing to me. I was very active in doing things and being in sports, but I also was very intrigued about how that was really brought to your entertainment on the television. And that's kind of where it all stemmed from, was kind of that junior, senior year as I looked at going to various colleges and ended up at the University of Toledo.
So you started to think about college and that. So what types of schools did you look at? Did you kind of know you were going to the University of Toledo, or were you kind of open and looking at other different schools?
I was looking at a number of MAC schools in there, and again, OU, Bowling Green, Kent State, and then the University of Toledo. And in this point, looking at home life and that kind of thing, I was really going to be paying for much of my education myself. Parents, had that little nest egg, but not that significant to go ahead and really, be able to go ahead and support me through all those college years. So I ended up taking visits to all those colleges and ended up really staying home there at the University of Toledo, and really enjoyed it at that point. It was two campuses, so I visited both the Scott Park campus and also the main campus. And Scott Park was the media center back when I was in school there, to date myself a little bit, but I know that it's now all moved to the main campus.
Right.
And that's kind of where I was taking those visits and trying to figure out where I wanted to go, and that ended up being the university.
So you picked the University of Toledo. Let's go into that a little bit. So when you got to campus, did you get involved in student organizations, or were you kind of just going to school and going home? I mean, what did that first year or two look like?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a combination there. I was looking at a couple of the fraternities early on when I first came in my freshman year, but I was also working, and so that work, life, school moment that happened for me is that I had others that I was pledging and looking at the potential fraternities, and some people that I had met that were on campus in my media classes and that. But then I just thought there was just not the opportunity for me just having to go ahead and have that job to go ahead and support my education and being able to do that. And I had already been invested into the movie theaters. And so some of that entertainment value and what I was thinking of in the movie business or even the television business ended up being as part of the theaters and working at the theaters at that point in supporting that. So no, at that point I was working, ended up being a part-time job, but ended up being a full-time. So I was doing a full-time job and full-time school. And It was a lot to really endure doing that. So I was a commuter.
And that's common from the University of Toledo, especially in our era, right? There's a lot of people that work like I did the same. I worked in 30 hours a week and paying my way through school and trying to fight my way through.
Yeah, and I had to try to balance that because there were activities and different events on campus, and I tried to get a few of those. And many of the people that I started to get to know were living on campus because they came from some of the outer areas of Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. But it was good to go ahead and interact with them and to be on campus for a point, but I just couldn't have the extended stay of really investing my time in being there with student government or other activities that I thought was going to be the route that I took. But I enjoyed the working side of it and commuting.
Talk a little bit more about that job. What was the job you were doing while you were going through school?
Yeah, so I was going ahead and working at a movie theater, and it was more of, concessions, usher, and that, and it evolved then into a managerial position. And so then I ended up managing theaters, and it was the AMC theaters there in town. And so that was probably a 30 to 40 hour work week for me, but it was a great way for me to go ahead and hone my skills with networking with people, managing and leading people, and having that environment as a manager. And then two, beyond just the movie theaters, I ended up going ahead and really networking with my professors there on campus and those that were in the media business and being able to look at internships. And so I ended up doing that work at night, an internship, and then from there, which was at Fox 36, and doing in the television business. And that was kind of my first foray into live entertainment, network content, syndication content. And that really kind of drove me. So not only with taking a full-time set of classes with school, I was doing an internship and also at the theater. So it was very interactive. And I think the one thing that really drove me was being able to interact with people at the movie theater, where we were getting people from all over the community. And it was great to be able to network with people from all parts of that and their own backgrounds, which was very fulfilling when you're in an environment like that. It wasn't just people from Central Catholic or from the University of Toledo. They were from all parts of the area, which was great to have that.
That gets to that kind of next question. Is like when you started getting to senior year and thinking about life after college, what were you thinking about there?
Yeah, I was pretty mixed in that first year, or kind of that senior year into my freshman year in college, and it was because I was torn between radio and television. And I was at the University of Toledo's radio station doing sports updates and sports comment and doing some on-air stuff with the radio station. But then ultimately, being a very visual person, I got the opportunity to look at Fox 36, did a 6-month internship with them, was able to go ahead and really see production and programming and content and operations. And those kind of things just kind of, the light bulb went off and said, really, I'd love to be in the television industry and not necessarily the radio industry, which was great experience on the radio side. But ultimately, I chose to go to Fox 36. And that's where you start to network and start to really kind of, earn your stripes and really find a mentor and get into a business like that. And I really loved what the television business was all about. And it was a good way for me to go ahead and get that first foot in the door.
So now you graduate, you're getting in that first job. What actually turned out to be the first job after college?
Well, actually, it was pretty opportunistic. And I always promote this with anyone that are looking at internships, and some are paid internships now, some are not. And just to get into the internship business and kind of get your name out there, before I graduated my senior year, I actually took a part-time position with Fox 36. So I not only was able to go ahead and mature that, but timing came up was perfect for me. A gentleman left the business there, and they needed somebody to work part-time. And I ended up jumping in about 6 months to 8 months after my internship. They remembered me. And being able to have someone that remembers you and the skill set and the work ethic and those things was, exciting for me. So I was able to really jump in at an early stage right before I graduated college with Fox 36.
So now you segue into Fox 36 and you're kind of behind the scenes, it sounds like, doing programming type work. How did it evolve from there?
When I started out, again, it was in programming, and then it ultimately went into production and operations, and we were doing a lot of the live events. We were about ready to start a newscast later on in that career. But ultimately, I kind of sunk my teeth into what can I do to go ahead and really further my career, be in kind of that growth mode. As I look in a growth mindset, those are just keys that everyone, I think, has to continue to look for. So I just learned as much as I could, knowing this was an environment where I wore multiple hats, and having that was really a successful point in my career. And I was there for about 12 years. So I went from being just a part-time programming editor, coordinator, to director of operations for Fox 36.
Okay.
So I learned from the mentors that were there and the leadership that was there. Had a lot of great coworkers that I worked with along the way. And not only was it the networking within the station, but I was in the programming department. And at that point, you were starting to look at independent producers, distribution companies, and the major Hollywood studios. And you're acquiring content to fill those time periods within a television station that they call syndication. When it comes to the likes of Ellen and Oprah and Judge Judy and Wheel and Jeopardy and all these different shows and that are very pivotal for stations, in addition to their local news and local content that they produce, therefore the local viewers and audience there. So
Right.
that all kind of started there, and I started those relationships outside of the station with those communities of people in New York and LA and different parts of that. And then from there, I was given the opportunity through networking of individuals who worked with me, and I negotiated content and acquisitions at that point. And an opportunity came up in Chicago. And this was at WGN America, one of the top general entertainment cable networks, but also one of the top affiliates there in the Chicago, because WGN had a local affiliate, but also was a superstation similar to what TBS is all about, or what was back in the day.
Back in the day,
and they were looking for a programming executive to come in and do those things, and it was one of those aha moments that you look at and you go, I really thought I was going to stay here in the Toledo area for a good length of my career, but I thought that growth mindset, get the fear out of the way, look for opportunities, and this was a great opportunity to go ahead and move. And so I picked up the family with 3 young kids and my wife, and we made the move to Chicago from Toledo, which, to put that in perspective from just a demographic or a DMA positioning, at that point, Toledo was ranked out of 210 television markets, 66th.
Wow.
Chicago was ranked 3.
Wow.
So it was definitely going ahead and taking a step up in the industry and being able to really program a top tier national network along with the local television station there. So that took us and kind of just propelled me in that. And, we made that move, and you say, life experiences. It was one of those great life experiences, ups and downs, but wouldn't trade it for the world. Chicago's a great environment. And I was part of the programming team there at WGN.
So you took the leap now with family and your blossoming career, and you head into Chicago. Where did you go from there?
Stayed in Chicago for about 9 years, and Tribune was going through, like many industries do, a lot of challenges, dissolving. M&A was going on a lot. There was a lot of companies integrating with each other, and we took over some really huge management that had really kind of changing the culture of what Tribune was before. And it was media companies absorbing other media companies and that. And at that point, they were like 3 to 4 months into it. And a call came from another media company and said, would you like to do your own opportunity with another upstart media company in Kansas City, Missouri? And at that point, I saw there was a lot of angst going on, a lot of culture conflicts happening within the Tribune company. I went from Tribune Entertainment to Newport Television, which was a group of about 60 television stations based in Kansas City, and we had affiliates, television stations all across the country. So I ended up taking on a leadership role there in their executive office in Kansas City, and moved from Chicago to KC.
All right. So now you're moving further away from hometown and grandma and grandpa, and you got the kids in school, and your career is continuing to blossom. I'm sure you were only working 4 or 5 hours a week at that point.
It was a challenging time. My wife is the better half, and being able to go ahead and really give that foundation to our children was huge. And we had the opportunity for her to follow my career and put her career kind of on pause, and being able to go ahead and really in an environment, as you say, moving away from family, you need somebody there in the household to really kind of take care of the full-time job of raising a family. And that's what we were. And our children loved Chicago and Kansas City. It was their formidable years. But I think with the moves that we made, it became life experiences that now I look back on, and my wife looks back on and goes, wow, it really gave them a good taste of what life is, how to really push through challenges, how to grow in many different ways. And Kansas City and Chicago are two of the areas that our kids really kind of know as families. And I think what really is important, not only in the work environment, is that we have friends now all across the country and other parts of the world, just because of the nature of how we networked and what the people that we met throughout these steps. And Kansas City is only one of those steps that furthers. There's a few other steps that have taken me throughout, but those were very formidable because those are the families that all had kids and children in the same age bracket. So you know how that is. It's one way to go ahead and network with people and really understand it from all facets of the industry. And I was one that was in the media industry, and many of our friends were not in that. So it was great to have others within to network in many other areas of the world and how business is run and that. So Kansas City was a great town, you know.
That's how we learn. It's there's an up and a down to it. There's there's the personal side of it and the family, like we talked, or like you talked, and then there's the professional side of it, and it's taxing on both fronts.
Yeah, it is.
Right, because you're learning on both sides. So all right, so you're in Kansas City. Things sound like they're going well. Where next? What happens from Kansas City?
Yeah, so we're there about 4 or 5 years, and you put those roots down. Everyone says 3 to 4 years. You're really trying to you start to get comfortable. Well, then another uncomfortable moment comes, and those are the areas that you kind of just you embrace it and you figure out what's next. There's a lot of up and down emotionally and those things that happen, but we came to a point that we were owned by an equity firm, and a lot of the media companies in that day and age, they were owned by New York or LA, even Charlotte-based equity firms. And usually at that point in time, when you're looking at this, they always wanted to see what the barometer is and what's happening with other media companies, and are they being bought, purchased? What's the EBITDA and where's that at? And we were in that stage here about 5 years in. That equity firm started to ask around and say, maybe we should think about how profitable our stations are, and is there any buyers out there? We ended up selling to, I think, 5 or 6 companies and dissolving the company, which was tough because we put down some additional roots down there in Kansas City. We thought this was going to be a place to kind of stay, long term, or if it was bought by another company, but we keep everything intact. Well, we dissolved that company, and then for about 3-4 months, I was looking. It was a matter of being part of that team, and we dissolved all the stations and sold them to other companies. And I started to network, and the networking part of that is going to the industry events, being able to really kind of have that background of many relationships, either on a really casual basis, others that were very business oriented, and others that were just LinkedIn opportunities. You just got to network with people who were like-minded individuals in the business. And I ended up going to an event and talking to 2 or 3 companies about the opportunities of staying in the content business and in acquisitions. And I ended up going to Raycom Media at the time, and they had a Los Angeles-based programming department. So I ended up making the move from Kansas City to Los Angeles and uprooted everybody. And at that point, my kids are getting a little bit older, and a lot of angst about, we have to move again. What's going to happen? What's going to take place? Do we really want to be in Los Angeles? And so we made the move. And it was a great opportunity for me to get out there and really even be closer to the studios and work for a company that had another 60 plus television stations around the country, production, media services, Raycom Sports, which was very big in the ACC, basketball and football. And so it was a very diverse company that was based actually in Montgomery, Alabama, but their programming division was based out of Los Angeles. So that's yeah.
So Debbie and I had the good fortune of living near Pasadena, California, when we were right out of college. So we're fans of the LA area and Pasadena and up in that whole area in the valley. So whereabouts did you settle with your family in the LA area?
Yeah, we settled in Calabasas, California, which was, not about 45 minutes from the Burbank area, any of the we'll call it media center there, even though Century City and some of the other areas. But there was the west side, and there was the valley, and we were in the valley there. And I was doing about a 45-minute commute into Burbank to corporate offices there that were near Warner Brothers, Disney, and the likes of some of those other studios, Universal. So yeah, LA was kind of like a little bit of a vacation, because it was the entity of knowing what Southern California is all about, knowing where the beach is, the mountains, the activities. It was a time where we really enjoyed being able to really go. We can go at any point. The day is going to be 75 degrees and sunny, and it was great. For me, it was the opportunity to really get a lot more face time with executives, studios, really be able to, because you were in the heart of what the media business is all about and what Los Angeles is all about. So it's very cutthroat. There's no bones about it, but we really enjoyed it. We embraced it. We met people from Pasadena, Calabasas, Glendale, and other parts, and those that really transplanted from the Midwest. So you kind of gravitate to what you know, and we were able to go ahead and really meet a lot of families that were either in the neighborhood or part of the industry that actually made the move from Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, and a lot of them that were MAC or Big Ten alum, which was kind of nice to see, because in many parts there was a lot of folks where you just didn't really know who you were going to meet up with, and it was very challenging because not only was it just what's your name, but what do you do? What do you do is a big thing, because what your status is in your business life tends to kind of dictate where people are when it comes to networking with folks out there. It's just a different breed.
Right, it is. It's an experience that professionally, living in the New York area, living in LA, it's something that everyone should do to experience it, because it really rounds you out. And there's a lot of great people on the East and the West Coast for sure.
Yeah.
So you're in LA. What happens then? Where do you how do we go from there to where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of details into what happens with work environments, relationships with others, and that kind of thing. And there was things that were going on that were very angst in some areas of the company. And that was just a matter of having people that were in different mindsets than your own. And I ended up taking a secondary position, but then overseeing the whole entire department in that. And that was a challenging year just because of my boss and the entities that take place, and a lot of the manipulation and things that do happen in the business world that you have to go ahead and take on those challenges head on. And it was a challenging year for me, but it really, grew me as an individual and all the things that are part of that. So we went through that whole process in that, not to get into any of those details, but we went through that process, and then ultimately our company was looking at going ahead and divesting some of their business units, consolidating areas. And what we had is we had a production company in Nashville, Tennessee. And beyond Charlotte and other areas of the country, this was one of those that Nashville was, one of those really hot spots. It was a great state, a great city, up and coming. Everything was like, everyone talked about it and said, you're going to love the opportunity if we can go ahead and move this programming department and entity. And so I was still with them and moving it on. So in the transition of moving from Los Angeles, closing down an office, and reopening a smaller office in the Nashville area, the company actually was bought by another company. So we were 2 weeks out from moving from Los Angeles to Nashville, and the company was being sold. So the good thing is that we had the opportunity to take a move, get back closer to family and friends, figure out what the next move may be in. But we were very excited about getting to Nashville. And you'll hear more from my wife at some point, I'm sure, here. And Julia's the creative one in our household. She is the one that's got a ton of talent, and she is a singer-songwriter. And Nashville was like, wow, this is a great opportunity to really flourish in what she's doing, because she has followed me everywhere.
Right.
Now it's an opportunity to go ahead and be in Nashville. And at that point, I wasn't sure what I was going to do next once we got there, because as the consolidation happened and we were being bought out, there was a number of our executives, I think there was 150 of us, that then weren't going to be with the company going forward. So I had another 2 to 3 months and then stayed there. So as I looked at this business and having that background and the skill set that I had, I ended up going ahead and consulting, and did it for 3 years, just kind of reworking what I wanted to do, what was my next move, keying in on my relationships that I had with previous networks and channels and production companies, and ended up consulting on acquisitions and production. And at that point, in the media business, the last 20 years, everything is driven by technology. And so you know that everything is moving in a different direction. So the great thing about what I've had is I had broadcast experience, I had superstation basic cable experience. I was now getting into fast channels, which of course was the streaming side of the business. And all those things kind of ended up coming together as I was consulting for companies for that. And once we got to Nashville, we thought we were going to stay there. That was really it. Julie's continues to flourish in what she's doing, and I'm flourishing in the consulting side. And that, COVID hits and the whole pandemic, but it wasn't as much of a shock to our system because we were already working from home. And that really kind of helped that process. But then those networking and the people that I knew in the business came a knocking and said, hey, by the way, there's a position open in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I think you should talk to these people if you're open to talking. And I'm always open to talking and understanding where I can go ahead and further my career and start some new relationships. And I didn't really know about this company. INSP is a all Westerns network, but they also have a fast channel. We also have a ministries network. And so it's a very diversified portfolio of what this company was. And they came to me when I was consulting, and we then ended up making the move to Charlotte, and I ended up accepting the position to head acquisitions here for the company that I currently work for. And,
That's pretty cool. I love it.
So
I love it. Just, you, when you were at Central Catholic High School, getting ready to graduate and making that choice to go to college, the last thing I'm sure you were thinking about is, I'm going to go move 6 times across the United States.
no, it wasn't really, it didn't feel like it was in my DNA at the time, but
You were just like, I was just happy to have a job.
yeah. Yeah, but I knew in my heart though that the media business is driven on the East and West Coast. So staying in Toledo, Ohio was just not going to be the same opportunities that I could really invest in going forward, and that's why my wife and I made a decision. Said, yeah, if you want to really go ahead and run with the Bulls, let's go.
Right,
Yeah.
Follow the dream. Now, you mentioned earlier on that you talk about moving the kids to Chicago and your wife, and that. Talk a little bit about family here. Where did Julie and you meet? Did you meet in high school or college or after college?
We met at that intersection of high school and college at the movie theater. So we actually went to the same high school, but we didn't know each other in high school.
Okay.
And then they had that foundation of really that melting pot of the theater, because there was people coming from all parts of the community, from some of the Catholic schools, public schools,
Right.
you name it, academies. They were all coming to there, and we got a great network of people, and we ended up meeting each other there at the movie theater. So it was one of those great appropriate times to say, it was kind of more of a work relationship that ended up spurring to more of a personal relationship. And so that's where we met, and that's kind of where we started. And she was in a completely different field than the media, and we both had our great careers. She's got her master's degree, and she was moving forward in her career. And then once we got married and we started to talk about kids, we had to make that definitive decision of, what do we do now?
Right.
And
Right.
we ended up making that.
So now talk about your kids. You mentioned them earlier. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids. Daughter's the oldest, and I have 2 sons, so 3 of them, and they're all in all parts of the country. And reason being, they kind of settled themselves in places that we used to live.
Okay, that's kind of neat. So they kind of each had their own little roots in different places that were part of their formative years, right?
Yeah, roots and friendships, areas that they wanted to go to college, and that one is in the media business, another is in the production business, and one is in the airline business. So they have their unique situations. They've all gathered a great group of friends in that, and relationships, and they all kind of started to set roots because they found good friendships, and we knew that they were going to live their own lives. And
right.
I'm proud of what they've been able to do, and it really kind of elevates them to young adults when you have to go ahead and go on your own and kind of learn those life lessons. And there's a lot of kidding around that goes on, but they said this adult stuff isn't always that great.
Right.
I said, well, yeah, welcome to adulthood.
It's interesting to watch the kids evolve out of school and into their own lives, and kind of that 20s to 30 range, trying to figure out where their footing is at. It's an exciting time to be a parent.
Yeah, and building that foundation, I think a lot of what they have, and what really was instrumental, I think, is every area of what they were doing. They had a passion, and they were really focused on things. And what they did in their degrees was very much in line to what they're doing right now in their young careers, which is great.
Right.
And being in their 20s, they're enjoying life. They're loving where they're at in the areas of the country. It would be great to go out and see them more often than we do. But with technology and airlines and everything else, you can see them, and it's great to see them strive.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, our kids are away and near you in Charlotte there, so we struggle with that too, because we're close to our kids and we like being around them. So it's but like you said, the technology helps, right? It makes it a little easier than when we were young.
Yeah, the technology, what we're doing today, and being able to kind of interact with them at all parts, and being able to fly across the country in a few hours to be able to see them is great. And they have their own lives to live, and my wife and I have certainly understand that, but it's it's great because we know that they'll always be our kids.
Ken's referenced his wife, Julie, and I mentioned that we went to grade school and high school together. I've known Julie a long time. Julie has a fascinating career that she's kind of taken hold of from their time in Nashville and just the love of her life of music. And we're going to have the honor in a future episode here in a few weeks to meet Julie and talk about her path and her music and her writing and the great things that she's just following with passion. So Ken, I just want you to know I'm excited about that because she's loved music since we were in grade school.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. Yeah, she is touching people's lives and what she does creatively, and the networking that she has done with the circles in Nashville and others around the country and around the world is pretty special. And you kind of leave things like that with a little bit of legacy points of what she's done and original artwork and original. That's very talented, I have to say.
It's cool stuff. I mean, my memories of her, even from grade school, from the earliest time of grade school, was her with a guitar in her hand.
Yeah.
She always had a guitar and a love of singing in that. So I'm pretty pumped about having the honor to interview, her here on the podcast. So that'll be fun. So
yeah, I'm very proud of what she's doing and all the great things that she's creating. And it's exciting to see her excel in what she's doing. So Nashville was a point, and all things considered, when you make all those moves in the areas of the country and you go after your dreams and you have a passion for what you're doing, and you know there's going to be bumps in the roads, but you have insight and you have a vision, and thoughts are things, and when you can go ahead and manifest those things, they're really important. And
clearly God took you and your family and Julie on a journey to mold and shape all of you together. So that's it's great to see that manifest itself for all of you. So one last question for you. If you could go back in time and talk to some college students or even high school students, what would you share with them about embracing, their experience in high school or college?
I think humility and self-awareness come into that point. I think being able to be in a growth-minded set, surround yourself with people that you really admire, those that can go ahead and really take you to other steps, other aspirations. Those things were very important. Feel open to find that 1, 2, 3 mentors in your life that really give you kind of a guidance in what you're doing, and always out there listening to what they have to say. I mean, that listening part of really kind of taking it for heart or taking those ideas and thoughts and really then actively putting them into some type of action is really key. And then embrace those life experiences. I mean, those things, take the fear factor out of it that many of us try to look at. And going to Chicago in those early days was very, much a frightening point of ripping us away from all that we knew family-wise and taking 3 young kids to an adventure 4.5 hours away to the big city of Chicago. And those things that said, hey, you know what, God has a place for it, got a vision. God knows, where to go ahead and take this to that next degree and, embrace it and move forward. So that my younger self would say those things. I think that those positive affirmations that I always think about kind of takes you to that next level and next set. And not that it's all a bed of roses and all those things that do happen, but it's how you embrace those challenges and you move forward. That's what I would tell those, my younger self and those individuals who are in college right now, is really have fun with it. And don't feel like you have to be one area of, business and not say, hey, I want to go ahead and flip the switch and I want to move to something else. If you're not liking what if you're not liking what you're in, it's in your best interest to move and be happy with where you want to go and make that change.
Right. That's great advice. Well, Ken, you and I, like I said earlier, we could carry this on. There's so many fun roadways and pathways to go down here in the conversation. But for right now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say thank you for making time. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you sharing your journey with the Rocket Networker podcast audience. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun ride, and it's great to always interacting with you.
Thank you. And that's it for this episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. Now it's time to launch connections to ignite your success. And the key question is, are you ready? To schedule a Rocket Networker training program or keynote speech, go to rocketnetworker.com. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?